Now you all join me. Words are up here. Go down. Say, here you go down, Moses. Way down. Ohio State University. Go back in my hand. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Now, as landscape architects of the future, your role will be to design dynamic landscapes for human experiences. But I submit, and the song says it, and for this century, and particularly this century, your lens must be larger than human people. It must include a sensibility of plant people, animal people, air people, water people, fire people, and rock people. If we have time today, ask me about, in the Q&As, what about rock people. So in some ways, our thinking has to be, how do we become even more indigenous to the earth? Where all the elements are family. Now I am joined today, as I usually am, by my partner, Jennifer Bailey here. Raise your hand. And that song, Go Down Moses, also this is Women's History Month, right? And one of the individuals that we look up to a lot and walk around the country in her footsteps is Harriet Tubman, who was known as the what? As the Moses of her people. Saturday, we're going to be in Springfield, Ohio, giving a presentation that will be, you can attend in person. You can also be a part of it Facebook Live, so join us if you can. I'll spread the word. I have the flyers. It's at the Gammon House. But I'm mentioning the Gammon House because as landscape architects, students, maybe even practitioners, you want to find a way to connect up with community groups that need your help. And here's one here in Springfield. But I'm sure in your community, whether you're at Ball State, Low Country, South Carolina, or wherever you're from, there'll be other community groups that need your help to restore historical sites like the Gammon House. The Gammon House was a home built by a free black couple in Springfield, Ohio, back in the 1850s. There was also an Underground Railroad site. And the building here, you see how it looks. We did lots of work on it to refurbish it, redevelop it, inside and outside. And what they have done, again, the Gammon House was a Underground Railroad site for freedom seekers. What they have done is got some support from the local community, local foundations, local government, to create what is called the Gammon House Square. A much larger footprint where the Gammon House itself will be the anchor point. They're going to build some other museums, landscape, gardening, installations. But of course need people like you all So I would say while you're here at the, if you're here at Ohio State as a student, take a field trip down to Springfield or in your local areas. Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Virginia, are all part of the Underground Railroad. And they all have similar historical sites that need help. This QR code here, if you want to take a picture of that, that will take you to this Gammon Square website. That can be another LABash resource for you to connect up with. They're going to be using, of course, all kinds of called native grasses and native seeds and plants and trees and probably some, some other kinds of wetlands applications and rain gardens and who knows what all. That will be there. That will be there. So, now, the Gammon House was there because of our nation's contradiction. The USA, our nation, was founded upon stolen land from indigenous people that was referenced last night, and stolen labor from African people to do what? To do agriculture and foodways. Sugarcane, rice, cotton, hemp, tobacco, and so on, were the primary means of commerce in the triangle of trade between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. So a lot of our work that we do, Jennifer and I, around the country, we do about 30 presentations a year. Half of them are universities. We just left Dillard University last week for a whole week as scholar in residence. We've been all over the country, different places. Invite us to your location. But while we say that food and ag represent the foundational contradiction of injustice, it is also the focal point of transformation. Say that again. The food and agriculture are the point of injustice in our founding. It's also the focal point of transformation. And we encourage you all as students to embrace that idea, work with it, massage it, chew on it, then think about how you can begin to incorporate that contradiction and the focal point of transformation in your work. How well do you incorporate in your design work heirloom seeds, heirloom plants, native plants in your work? So the point is, because of contradiction, we've all been colonized. The USA, we say, is a settler colonial experiment in democracy. And you're going out, you're studying now, and you're going to go out and work on projects that are meant to try to rectify the affects of Southern colonialism, the idea of just cutting down all the trees. So we go out and plant other trees. We try to correct water pollution, water system problems. Because a certain kind of mindset has impacted the entire ecosystem makeup. So Jennifer and I, we formed about 3 years ago what we call the Systems Transformation Partnership, which says for you all, as you all are thinking about the word sustainability and the future, and designing things for the future, we're saying that we have created 6 pathways, and we encourage each of you to think about, if I were to ask you, well, what are your pathways to the future? What guides your work? of them on your own. Our pathways are earth-centric, woman-centric. Now, I don't see Sam here, or some of the, but I lie a lot, I want you to know. Forgive me, I'm a country boy from Kentucky. I lie a whole lot, so forgive me for that. But now, what's your name, brother? Your name is Joseph? Joseph. I'm gonna ask people to verify. Like Google. When I last checked, we all come through women. Is that right? Yes, sir. Oh, now, see? You okay? Thank you, Joseph. We all come through women. But we talk about the future being sustainable and never talk about women. Because men are doing most of the work of putting out there what is sustainability. So we say the second pathway is indigenous wisdom. Third pathway is you us wearing our George Washington Carver and the American ethos. Fourth pathway is art, music, and hip hop. Fifth pathway is Terra Madre and seeds. The last pathway, and they're all interconnected, all interdependent, is a vision that's transformative. Those are our 6 pathways, and we encourage you all again to think about these. Well gone. Now, I mentioned that we do about 30 talks a year, half of them to universities. We were in New Orleans the week after Mardi Gras for the entire week at DeWitt University. Partly because DeWitt has sent 10 students to Italy for the big slow food Terra Madre gathering. You all should go this year with us. They sent 10 students in 24 and 7 students in 22, along with 3 faculty. They made a stop in Paris, did a bunch of things in Paris. It's about food and ag again, food and ag kind of things, and whatever. So we invite you all to become more familiar with the Slow Food chapter here in Columbus, Slow Food chapter at your campus. We have a bunch of them. And think about coming with us in September. I spoke at Cornell University in April of 24. And they were so inspired, they sent 5. It's a global gathering, happens every 2 years. I got a book coming out this fall that will kind of chronicle my 8 times of being over there. And then tomorrow, I'm doing a talk. I forget what hall it's in. It's here on the campus.
It's important.
Yes, okay. 10:30 about Terra Madre as culture. And Terra Madre meaning Mother Earth. On our last check, all of us are children of Mother Earth. And that along with air and water and food, they are the 3 things that are essential for life that the earth provides. So tomorrow's talk is Terra Madre as culture. Now here's a map of our Joy and Justice journey, we called them last year. 25 cities, 15 states, 8 universities. And here's a list of, we have different points of connection, about 17 universities. This is our 4th year being here at Ohio State. We've got 2 more talks today in classes. One tonight at, once again, it's a dinner, tonight.
At the Piazza Palazzo restaurant in the Short North. It's a family-owned Italian restaurant.
Yeah.
Y'all should come out.
Night at 6. Okay. Then we're doing a talk tomorrow again, Terra Madre's culture, and then we're in Springfield on Saturday. Now, I mentioned these universities. I've been to Stanford about 3 times. And they developed they got about $2 billion from called the Dorff family, Dorff, to begin their sustainability center. I I'll be going out there sometime next year for the third time, but particularly around the environmental justice question of sustainability at Stanford. And I have, if you go online, I have a YouTube channel. Just Google in Jim Embry, Stanford, or whatever. I've got about 200 links online. What we've been doing. I've worked in some Cornell, things of that nature. But what I want to point out is that part of our view of systems change is that universities are the most powerful entity on the earth. More powerful than U.S. government, more powerful than Google and Apple, more powerful than the UN. You say, well, if we heard you were crazy as hell, okay, why they brought you up here, okay, you keep lying and telling things that aren't true. Here's why higher ed is the most powerful. Because all the leaders, higher ed, the military, corporations, religious institutions, are educated where? Educated where? So the point is, if we can get a radical shift in higher ed, we can then make some changes. And these two books represent a pathway for universities to operate as if the earth mattered. The first was by my friends at the Kellogg Foundation, and we used that book when I was living in Detroit, and we had a meeting with all the presidents of 5 universities that are around Detroit. Wayne State, University of Detroit Mercy, Mary Grove, Michigan State, University of Michigan. It's upon this book that says the mission of higher ed ought to be to develop students as agents of change. The second book, Planet U, is about 2 friends of mine from Canada. And the book describes, and they're all university professors, that we operate universities as if the planet doesn't matter. What we want to do is develop higher ed as if the planet matters. That's why we go around and speak to. I spent 20 years at University of Kentucky. I did brain research for several years in the hospital. I spent 20 years as an administrator of community ed around sustainability. In '79, I was offering courses in those old things called PC Junior, the old, early on computers, and I was offering back then this radical AI technology software called AutoCAD. One of the few people in the country to help begin that whole radical shift. Oftentimes with landscape architects, engineers, who said, no, no, no. We don't trust computers. They can't do what we do. We've been drawing for thousands of years. The pushback. You don't want around then. The point is, and for a while, at the cutting edge, at the early stages of many things. Now, I recommend these 2 books. We need to have a systems view. Right now, in higher ed, we're still teaching Newtonian Cartesian science of things being separate. I'm saying, let's teach current science, which is quantum science, that says we're all from the same source, we're all interdependent, and we're all interconnected. That's quantum science. These 2, by a friend of mine, Fred Capra, 2 books, The Turning Point. It says Turning Point means 500 years ago in Europe. They're about the way of thinking that at times we call Cartesian, Newtonian view of the world. And it has a global impact. So check out those two books, if you will. In 2010, I was invited to help co-write this book, as well as provide some photographs. You can get it online as a PDF if you do a Google search. Sustainable World Source Book. It was our attempt, and the book was written this way, again, trying to counter Newtonian way of writing. We had 20 writers that all submitted different essays around themes. And then we integrated. Can you imagine taking about 20-some essays? Because some of them are repetitive. So why have in the book 20 separate essays under your name and your name? Let's integrate them into a seamless whole. So it's a marvelous undertaking. Recommending one other book, Great Work, which defines where we are now. I didn't know Thomas Berry. I have most of his books, but I've been mentored by many people who knew Thomas Berry. And he's saying that the great work of this century, the great work of landscape architects, is to help us enter into the Ecocene period, where humans develop the sacred connection to the earth. He calls it the Ecocene period. Great work by Thomas Berry. Now again, this idea of earth-centric, woman-centric. Now let me ask you all, are you all real smart folks? Who or what is the greatest, most profoundly important landscape architect in the world? Who or what is the most famous, the most caring, the most dynamic landscape architect in the world? Absolutely. Girlfriend, look here. Give her a package of seeds. Yeah, we got some seeds here. I'll refer to it a little later. Thank you. Yes. So here is talk some more. I'll talk about this concept.
So, Terra Madre. Who's been to Terra Madre? Oh, a couple people have. Wonderful. Terra Madre, tell them where it is.
Right here, right now.
Ah, what does it mean?
What was that?
What does Terra Madre mean?
Mother Earth.
It means Mother Earth. And absolutely, Terra Madre is the most caring. That is actually what it was going for. I also was excited because there is a global gathering of countries around the world called Terra Madre. And they meet in Torino, Italy. And so they've been gathering, people from 160 countries have been gathering every 2 years there. And so we're really excited. We'll be there for Jim will be there for his 9th time. And Terra Madre also will be my 2nd time this year. And it's just a wonderful event where people, indigenous people, herds people, they actually can apply to become a delegate of Terra Madre from the United States, but also from all these different countries. And they actually provide funding while you're there, transportation, lodging, and so forth. And so what that allows for is for people who are herds people from the different countries, that indigenous people, fisher people, and then the Maasai people, they will all come to Terra Madre having been supported financially, which is really the only way that many of the folks will be able to come, right? But this is an alternative system. So as activists in the eco movement, but also in the food movement, because we say that is the #1 source of energy, right? We all want to eat 3 times a day. So we're all part of the food movement, no matter even if you have a bucket and you just swipe in every day and you eat your meal, or if you are actually out there farming, you're creating your own. Who growing? Shut them out. Peppers. Carrots. Tomatoes. Awesome. So when I was a student, I used to go here. I was not growing anything, I thought. So today we're actually growing peppers and things in my apartment. So that's exciting. And I have a garden plot. And we all should be growing something. We all want to eat every day. And part of this, what we say is our connection to nature, is the fact that we are growing things. So we've got sprouts with us today that we are growing, because we can all grow sprouts even if you live in a tiny bedroom space. I understand we're college students, but we can all be in touch with what we're eating, and in that way we're getting that energy from the direct source, right? Rather than the fried food and all these things that are toxic for us and not healthy. So in terms of yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mentioned that I'm sure that you all, in your studies, you begin with the earth being a landscape architect, don't you? Great. Okay. Now, on the earth, what might you say? What might you say? Here's a picture of the earth as architect. So what would you say might be on the earth the next most innovative, dynamic, fluid landscape architect? Who has a thought? Water. Give her a pack of seeds. Okay? We're going to give them all away. Water. Exactly. Water. Now, water. Again, don't trust me out loud. Do a Google search on water and raise the question of how it breaks almost every law of physics. Most liquids, when you freeze, they compress. What does water do? It expands. It has extremely high boiling point. It's called a universal solvent. The hydrogen bonding does all kinds of strange things. It's real strong. It can also break down other elements. Water is a landscape architect. We don't know how it came to Earth, because for a long time it's just a big rock. And water came. And the reason why we're here today is because of water. Now, last night we did the acknowledgement of many people. If I were a person, I have to say some Cherokee background. I said, no. Don't acknowledge us first. Acknowledge the river first. And we would go do a water ceremony first. I've been to many conferences where we do things like that. So, water as architect. And then beyond water, what would you say is the next? Can't hear you. Wind? Well, it could be. Could be wind. But I'm saying fungi. Fungi are somewhere in the ranking of a dynamic landscape architect. It's fungi that rose up on the earth out of the water that broke down rock, compost things, to give you a medium to work in. According to, again, I lie a lot, go to Google and put in how many fungi are there. They say we're between 2 and 4 million. And we only know 10% of them. Fungi are being used to break down microplastics, detoxify oil spills. At Ohio State, here, a trip 2 years ago, we're connected with they got here about $10 million to build a replica of a space station supposed to go to Mars in 2040, here on the campus. Okay? They're using compressed fungi to line the walls of the space station. Why? Because it's non-toxic, non-flammable, if it breaks down, you can compost it. Using fungi on intergalactic travel. So I hope you all in your studies will better understand and embrace the whole notion of fungi as landscape architects. Now, next question is, what is the skip some slides, excuse me. And what is the next most blessed landscape architect? And I would say a woman. A woman develops, because that's why you all are here, that's why we are here, because your mama and my mama were landscape architects, designing this most perfect place for us to be germinated, developed, and then kicked out. But now, where in your studies are you studying the role of women as landscape architects in this way? So what I'm going to do, my slide. I'm going to go to indigenous wisdom. Tell you my. Okay, so globally, we say one of the greatest landscape architects historically was a guy named Embry out of Kemet, Egypt. He's the person who designed the step pyramids. As a scuba diver, I was there in the Red Sea diving years ago. Spent time in Cairo visiting all the pyramids, and we went to Saqqara. But he didn't just design the pyramids, they were still standing, by the way, 3,000 plus years old. He also had these fabulous grounds around the pyramids. He was a physician, a poet. He was a person who I say represented a 360 thinker. Imhotep. And so now, in your studies, who do you regard as the father of landscape architecture? Who? Olmsted, right? Okay, Olmsted. He's usually regarded as and I disagree. I've been, because what happens if you go to Manhattan, it's known for many places. In Louisville, Kentucky, he helped develop Cherokee Park, Shawnee Park, and Iroquois Park. But if you take like Manhattan, a place that looked like Central Park 200 years earlier, and you come in there and you destroy that flora fauna paradise, and you come back in and replace it, something's wrong with that mental construct. What we're saying on the left here is an image of George Washington Carver. Y'all know him as a peanut wizard? But did you know that he did landscape design for 5,000 Rosenwald Schools? He also partnered with David Williston, who was the first black certified landscape architect. They combined together. Again, they did landscape design for 5,000 Rosenwald Schools. There's an image of them here. So part of your work is a whole movement now around the country, okay, to help preserve what's left of the Rosenwald Schools. Y'all can play a role in that in a variety of ways. On the right here is an image of how those schools look. They had a building, sometimes several buildings, and the beautiful grounds around them. They had gardens that were all woven into the curriculum, okay? The gardens the students operated were all woven into every subject. The residents in these communities had to provide half the money to help build the building. You're talking about cross-pollination, collaborating, celebrating. They did this in 5,000 locations. But I know you all, in your studies at Ball State, everywhere else, are learning about Carver and Ellison and their landscape architecture work. And Tuskegee and their work of some of the buildings, they built their own bricks, made their own paints. Homestead was spoon-fed out of a silver cup. They were working with people who just been freed. There's a whole legacy, there's a whole history that you all should incorporate in your studies. Here's a map of those 5,000 schools. Keep going. So what I'm offering you all, what we need in this century for landscape architects is you to become 360 thinkers. If you go to school K through 12, you might be 90. If you come through university, you might get 120 if you're lucky. And we're saying that ain't enough. Right now, that isn't enough. We need 360 thinkers. These are all things that Carver did. What you all are doing, he began doing this in the 1890s. Use of native plants, he was all into that. Use of fungi, he was all into that. He identified 1,200 fungi, had 4 named acronyms, enough's enough. They're calling on, here at Ohio State, don't believe me, Allah. Do a Google search. They name on the NASA Star Lab, it's called the George Washington Carver Science Lab. They're also growing up there, over here, where on campus, we were there a couple years ago. Carver believed in promoting the use and growth of sweet potatoes. Say the tubers, great, eat what as well? Eat the leaves too. Here at Ohio State, they're working on growing plants in 0 gravity. There's 9 months to a year to Mars. 9 months to a year, it's a 2-year journey. What are you going to eat? They're working now on how to grow plants like sweet potatoes. 0 gravity. So we're involved in things like that. Talk about collaboration. So I'm saying, use Carver as a way to become a 360 thinker. Carver grew up in the garden. The trees, the plants, the animals were his teachers. And he wasn't a bad scientist. He was friends with Einstein and Edison. They were all friends. They said to their friend, they said, well, Carver, brother, you are, they said, you're the greatest scientist of our era. They didn't just say greatest American. They didn't just say greatest Black American. Because Edison had a lens of electricity. Einstein had a lens of quantum mechanics, thermodynamics. Carver had a name that was 360. So anyway, we're gonna get on through here and come on. And what I want to do is move quickly to talk about some things that I've been doing, especially in Detroit. Just move on to the Detroit slides. Okay. I spent about 5 years in Detroit, working a lot with a couple named Jimmy and Grace Boggs. I was the director of the Boggs Center for about 5 years, and we did a whole host of things in Detroit in connection with 5 universities, and oftentimes, oh, okay, it's full. Great, no problem. But it gets unfrozen, we'll come back to it. We developed with design student, with Detroit Mercy, a green vision of Detroit. Not a green vision of a neighborhood, which is all fine. Not a green vision for a small, but for a vision for Detroit. Okay? This is Jimmy and Grace Boggs here. I met them in the 70s, and they're like, again, approaching this idea of 360 thinkers. Okay? And so this is an article in Metro Times that came out in 2003, I think. This is a QR code, and it describes our vision, working closely again with the design school, University of Detroit Mercy, but also in collaboration with University of Michigan, Wayne State, Michigan State, and Mary Grove. Okay? Next one. So look that up. Now, while we were there, you should get a picture of this, find the book. We had friends who edited this book called Eco-Ventures, about using art to solve environmental problems. A friend named Sue Stade put the book together, and it went around the world literally and looked at how it could be using landscape architecture, art, to help solve environmental problems. We were featured in here through our collaboration with a guy named Mel Chin, who's still alive, doing great things. His work was based upon primarily phytoremediation. Anybody know what that is? Great. Using plants to detoxify. Okay? And his work was based upon this guy named Rufus Cheney. Some of the early people around, again, using plants to detoxify. Now they have a thing called, next one. Go back one. Phytomining, where they perfected using plants to extract heavy metals. They burn them up, and now they're mining them. That was part of that kind of effort. Next one. And so Mel Chin, look him up. Now, this picture here, you might know who this guy here is? This guy, a friend of mine, who I met him years ago, named Wall. He wrote a book years ago called The Theory of the Oppressed, which is based upon a prior book called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed by the Brazilian Paulo Freire. But, next one. I had the blessing to spend a weekend with Gustavo Wall in Detroit. Okay? It was about using movement. I'm suggesting to you all, as landscape architects, to think about movement as a way to create participation in community, to express things. We talked about cross-pollination. Part of the work we did with the Gustavo Wall was woven into our work with the Catherine Ferguson Academy as 52 miles in Detroit. The young women would do Gustavo Wall's movement exercises in their classes to create a sense of vision for how they can interact HE sites in Detroit because it's mostly brownfields in Detroit. This book here represents, this picture here comes from Detroit on the young girl's hands on black soil. That garden there was restored through these methods. It was a trashed out lot full of bricks and bottles and toxic metals. We went in there for a couple of years and did all kinds of work, okay? Utilized as best we could community people. After several years, we were able to go in there safely. And this picture here is called, some of my catalogs called Gold Dust, because the black earth is more valuable than gold. Next one. This time we got that. Okay. Also, while I was in Detroit, like here, I was a student. I'm always a student. I had the occasion to spend several weekends with a guy named Bill McDonough, who wrote a book called Cradle to Cradle. If you don't have it, pick it up online. What he was saying, the important thing isn't recycling, reusing, it's redesign, where there's zero waste. He also was able to convince the Ford Motor Company to put on the Ford Rouge plant. Talk about a green roof, it's 10 acres. I was blessed to spend time with Bill McDonough. We had kids in the short summer, and we were doing what's called seed bombing. Anybody done seed bombing? Take dirt, clay, put seeds in there, and we were using sunflowers. We went around for years, throwing out seed bombs. Come along again, there'll be sunflowers. We say Ford Motor Company, because what we're doing got in the paper. Who was putting sunflowers everywhere? It was us. If you go to Dearborn now, at Ford headquarters, you're going to see these huge fields of sunflowers. Landscape, architecture, redesign. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to close out here and go all the way down to the things here. Again, our both of us, back we moved to Kentucky. I developed an art garden in Lexington. You can read about it. It's called the Isaac Murphy Memorial Art Garden. We connected up with the students in Kentucky, come out, help us do scenario planning, using a Christopher Wall's methods to design an art garden there. And come back up and find these here. Now, last story I'm going to tell about landscape architecture and my collaboration, my cross-pollination with anybody and everybody. We all have to change radically. In Kentucky, I helped found what's called the Kentucky Pollinator Stakeholder Group, composed of about 80 people from about 50-some organizations, including federal government, state government, universities, city government, neighborhood groups, as well as Columbia Gas, which is a natural gas supplier in 5 states. Also on our stakeholder group were people who worked for Bayer and Monsanto. Now, Columbia Gas, again, operating natural gas pipeline in 5 states, 45,000 miles. What were they using to spray along the transmission lines? Yeah, what do you use to spray? Roundup. That was used, by the way, in the Vietnam War with Agent Orange, same derivative. I was invited to speak at the Columbia Gas executive board or leadership team back around 2014. I said, thank you all for all of your service in providing natural gas. And in there was Bayer people. I said, thank you all for what y'all done, but you all are archaic. You all are archaic. I was being respectful. Now, I happened, 3 months go by, my friend Susan calls me, Jim, on what you said, that put a burr in their butts, but we got a letter from them saying we want to meet with you again and design a radical landscape architecture initiative, getting rid of our friends Roundup and using low-growing pollinators like white clover, red clover. So, my point is, part of your work must be to interact with everybody, saying we all have to change, even big corporations. So what I have in here is our Kentucky and the whole region we call native seeds. About 20 of them in there. Joe Pye weed, red clover, annuals, perennials, forbs, blue falls indigo, bergamot. So Columbia Gas is now, it began back in 2016, converting 45,000 miles to get rid of Roundup and put these in. So, if you would, if you want something like this, take them over with you. Got a few. Share the story. That's what we do. We love what we do. Travel a lot. Come here. Thank you for your willingness to come and show up. Listen. Invite us to your campus. If you like to your campus, I can't promise you. But I won't say it like I did at OSU. You all are archaic. Out here is all this green concrete. That's green concrete out there. You ought to have all kind of perennials. Ought to have forests in here. Ought to have bird feeders, bird houses. That's what I mean by how are you? I would like the earth doesn't matter. We talk about sustainability. You say, well, the campus ought to be modeling it. All the buildings, all the grounds should be teaching us about different things. So I said, go back to your campus. We're working on what's called B Campus and B City. We work with Xerxes Society, trying to get that designation. Okay, as a campus, work on that for yourself. Okay, because again, most campuses are not pollinator friendly. Now why I come here and talk about cross-pollination? I mean, I'm all loving the thing. If your campus isn't pollinator friendly, why come here and talk about it? I'm saying it's important to be here. It's important to be here. I'm saying let's make it real. We're going to have flowering trees. So I'll be tagged by the QR code with knowledge of the trees. Trees have been around 200 million years. We've been around as humans about 1 or 2 million years. The trees know who they are, but then Carver talked to the trees. Last point, at Cornell University, again, I lie a lot, don't believe me. I spoke there a couple years ago. They were researching how plants talk to plants using the Carver model and how humans talk to plants. I submit to you all as landscape architects. Encourage your professors to say, look at professor, take me outside to sycamore tree. And help me learn or relearn how to talk to trees. Because we're going to need their help. The way forward isn't just about how humans can figure stuff out. How can the rivers and mountains, trees, or fungi? Love y'all so much. Thank you.
Is there any questions? It's B Campus.
B Campus, Xerxes Society sponsors right now, 2 designations, one for each camp and one for each city. Okay. Thank you all. Take good care. Have a rest of the great LABash. LABash. Yeah. The students invited me here, so look here. We heard about your talk last year about hip hop and agriculture. Look online, Ohio State did a whole talk on hip hop and agriculture.
Yep, we're around Gibbons today and tomorrow.
If you want to see some of this stuff up
Yep, we
here.
have Steve.
Where are you going next?
I don't know. I'm struggling with.
I'm going to section. That should be like, I think it's that building. You want to see?